On this edition of the program, the Republicans in the House avoid a government shutdown. Matt Laslo joins us fresh from the floor. What is going on with ActBlue, and is there a simmering financial scandal afoot? And we talk more about the Republican strategy that isn't and the politics of how to own a shutdown if you're a Democrat with Jen Briney. All that and just insanity with tariffs and First Amendment stuff. Just another day in the life of Trump's America. It's all coming out.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program. We have a whole episode that was already done and dusted. It was already rocking and rolling. And then the thing that we were previewing, we were talking about, which is still a good conversation, still going to happen. It actually happened. And that is that the Republicans have passed a clean CR on to the Senate. In the chamber was Mr. Matt Laslo, who is joining us right now. This is the third trial of Mike Johnson, right? If we are to put this in olden terms, he had to secure his own speakership, pass a budget, and now avoid a shutdown. He has happened to go 3 for 3 and in the first try on each move. How did this come together?
See, and that's what, even your framing of it, I was like, wait, do I disagree there? And I'm like, how much of this do we say is Johnson versus how much of this is Trump? But that's where, at a certain point, maybe in this new Congress and new iteration, we can never totally separate the two. But like, Johnson doesn't come across as strong, you know?
Nope.
Like it's always the last minute, and then, he saves the day. Or was that because Vice President J.D. Vance was on the Hill this morning twisting arms? Was that because Trump was on the phone? So that's where, like, I kind of look at Speaker Johnson much as I look at Elon Musk, as in, you're there until you're not.
Yeah.
Like, one of these days, none of us knows which day it's going to be or which weekend, but they're both just totally expendable. From what I can see.
But I think being a vessel for the boss's wishes is the fastest way to stay in your spot. And it seems as if that Mike Johnson has done that. I have heard similar things from the Republican side of the Hill, that there's a lot of frustration in the Republican conference, that things aren't particularly organized. Things get sort of shaggy until the absolute last minute, and everybody thinks they know something that they don't. Oftentimes, especially at the end of last year, there was a lot of anger over things leaking to the press before they, were even talked about in conference. And yet, here we are. What was the final count? Apparently, a few Democrats didn't show up, so it gave the Republicans a little bit more wiggle room. What was the final vote here?
Final vote. So all I know is that we had 2 flippers.
Okay, that's really what I want to know.
So Thomas Massey was the one, and pardon me, he was the one flipper, going with the other side. And then we had Golden from Maine being the only Democrat to flip. And so you only had 2 really swap, which again just makes it so strange, the dynamics. And this is where I was trying to look it up, but that's going to take too long, so I'm not going to anymore. But that's where, again, Johnson's got this tightrope that he's walking. And, like, I can see in 2, 3, 4 months when maybe they're pushing Speaker Jordan, or, when they're pushing a more MAGA speaker, I can see a lot of these Freedom Caucus folks pointing to Speaker Johnson and saying, he's the one who did this bill. They always have a way to save Trump from their fury. So this did not ingratiate Speaker Johnson more with his right flank, which is always nipping at his heels.
Yeah.
And so even though the Freedom Caucus did come out and endorse this bill formally, which is kind of huge for them.
It's a big deal because they don't like continuing resolutions. This is kind of their whole thing.
And they do say like, hey, we got 13 billion in cuts, even though Pentagon got its budget plussed up. So they're claiming wins when they go back home. But again, no one's leaving Washington because the House is now gavelled out, just minutes
They're
ago.
out. Yeah.
So
Deuces.
no Republicans are leaving like really happy. If anything, now they're all looking at the Senate like, hopefully they, sign off on our cheat sheet homework that we like scrambled together at the last minute. So yeah, I don't see this as true.
But ultimately, from what I've heard on the right, this was the last cleanup from the last Congress, where obviously it was Biden and it was Schumer. So this not being everything they wanted, aside from hardliners like Massey, who are just not going to vote for continuing resolutions unless it does X, Y, or Z. I got the sense that this was something that everyone just wanted to get behind them, that they're going to save their powder for this next budget that came up and all the reconciliation or the fights that are going to happen between the Senate and the House on that.
That is a perfectly good way to think about it because, everyone, I need to take a step back. Guys, it's only March. Trump's only been in office just shy or 2 months, do we say now?
You want to know what the funny thing is? I saw yesterday that either yesterday or today was his 50th day in office. And traditionally, in a political speak, you talk about the first 100 days being the supercharged element of the presidency. And thus far, it's been a fruitful first 100 days. Now, that's probably downplaying it because there's been so much happening on the executive side. There's been so much happening on the world stage. There's been so much happening for so much happening's sake. But even between Congress, they ripped through the appointments in record time and without losing anybody that didn't already drop out by the time that they went to the Senate. They passed the budget. They did it as one big, beautiful bill as opposed to two. That was the big conversation that was happening at the beginning of all this. Now, the economy might be in a depression and the stock market is screaming so loud you can probably hear it over the Potomac. But in terms of some of the congressional stuff, I don't know how they could go faster.
Right. And one could argue, and we hear this from the Freedom Caucus folks, they're like, hey, this isn't conservative enough, but they're also walking on these interesting eggshells where they feel that their base, their personal base back at home, they're feeling that fire from them, but they're also afraid of the fire down the street
yes.
at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And so I don't think, and it's actually interesting. One of my clients for my wire service, the LCB, is Raw Story.
Yeah.
I broke the internet last month with a 3,000 word deep dive on Jim Jordan, but through the lens of this is the first Congress post Chevron doctrine. And this gets a little wonky, sorry folks, but the Supreme Court last term or whatever, they shot down this thing called the Chevron doctrine, which is basically for a handful of decades, it basically said Congress can allow the EPA to do its homework for it. So Congress passes this big bill saying we love rivers. We're not going to write the jot and tittle of that. The EPA is going to write the specifics of that law for us. Supreme Court said, hey, Congress, you have to now do your own homework. And so this is the first Congress post-Chevron doctrine. And it was surprising to me that piece was the number one piece on their site last month. But it shows these different dynamics where people are, and people in the public as well, are hungry for, people are looking for change. We saw that in the way people voted in November. And so people, there's this focus and energy around change. And I think right now a lot of Republicans are whoa, whoa, because they're feeling that change.
Yeah.
And now they're having to go and write what Doge and Elon Musk, they're having to write that into laws.
Yeah.
And so now when they're doing that, that's twisting them in pretzels. So I think they almost breathed a sigh of relief kicking this can down the road collectively, because there's just a lot of pent up Republican on Republican rage that is, they can only keep quiet for so long.
You know, it's funny you talk about the constituencies and how much a lot of these folks on the Republican side, part of the reason why I think a lot of people believed that this was going to be a heavier lift for the Republican side is because you do have a lot of these budget hawks that don't agree on what math is. They like literally, they don't agree what things cost or what the laws of math are. But the one thing that is on their side is that if they are hardliners for change, right now in the air, being covered, what their enemies are screaming about is there's too much change. So there's less of an onus on them to say, let's stop everything right now and demand change, which is usually the way that they go. And more, it's a more nuanced conversation of, okay, well, how do we encode the change going forward? So you have Thomas Massey that's saying, I'm not going to vote for this CR because it's not even putting into law what Doge has cut. And then you have other people that are saying, look, we're going to agree that the federal government's going to impound money that isn't being spent, or we're going to do rescissions, and that's going to be a whole nother thing. Let's focus on the next budget to codify what Doge has cut, and we will go from there. But at the very least, if you're at that second level of conversation, then you're probably not getting a whole lot of calls. Even the most hardline representative is probably not getting as many calls saying, screaming and yelling, you got to stop this.
Yeah, and I love the way you framed it there, because, yeah, that's the feeling I get in Congress right now. Everyone's pointing over there, over there, over there. No one's pointing at, like, what they're not doing, which is, what they're not doing is having any oversight over the executive branch.
No.
Which, yeah, Congress, your first job is to, tax and spend, et cetera, and then military. Your job is also oversight. And I think members of Congress aren't dumb. Like, these Republicans, they feel that, and they feel that they are being connected to the unsavory parts of the Trump shakeup. And so they also are afraid of their ultra MAGA base, where they don't, and I hate that term, except y'all put it on your caps, so I use it. But so, like, that ultra MAGA wing, if you're seen as an impediment to Trump in any way whatsoever, you become the enemy.
Yeah.
And so they're walking this fine line between what they promise their voters, like, hey, we care about deficits and the national debt. Y'all didn't back in 2017 during the first Trump administration when y'all racked up the debt and deficit. And so that's where, neither party really has a long memory once they get in power and have the trifecta. But especially with the same new media tools that Trump used to, propel himself back into the White House, hey, those lawmakers are on those same new media platforms, and they're freaking out a little bit.
And yet, the train keeps on rolling. And this probably was a little bit louder because Trump got upset with Massey amidst, of increasing a trade war with Canada and possibly successfully negotiating, or has team successfully negotiating a ceasefire in Ukraine. But amidst all that, in his infinite free time, he talked about primarying Thomas Massey, and Chris LaSavita is taking shots at Massey on Twitter. But that was pretty much it. Other than that.
You know what Massey just told us?
What's that?
Massey, on the bottom steps of the Capitol, has got 30, 40 reporters around him. And I'm like, okay, there's no news there, but I still listen in.
Yeah.
But so Massey, he's like, oh, whoa, they knew they couldn't get my vote. He's like, the reason Trump and them came down on me so hard was to scare away any other Republican who was thinking of defecting. Which, I can't necessarily disagree with that.
I think that that's likely. I mean, that seems
Right?
to have been the foolproof strategy thus far with Johnson. Is everything's going to go on schedule. If you want to talk tough, talk tough. Tell all the reporters in the hallways that you're a soft no or a hard yes or whatever. That you're just you're a frowny face. Blah blah blah. And then at the end of it, if you really want to get naked, go get naked. Thomas Massey's going to get naked no matter what. But you better be willing to be the only one next to Thomas Massey, because that seems to have been the issue on all three of these, is that you have one person that steps out and then everybody else is like, all right, if there were four people doing it, I'd jump in. But right now it's just Thomas Massey, and I don't want to be his bosom buddy on this, and then we both get destroyed.
And don't anyone forget, Massey, he's been principled, whatever you call it. He's stuck. He runs on what he legislates.
Yes.
But he's also a multimillionaire. So, like, he's not afraid to lose this job in ways that others aren't. And I think that gives him a little bit of more power than just his principles.
Well, yeah. I mean, also, they already tried to primary him once and it failed. So, like, you know, he's got come at me, bro energy. He's a fascinating figure right now because, you know, he just had a personal tragedy with his wife, and there's a lot of like DGAF in everything about Thomas Massey these days, up to and including being one of the only voices inside the Republican Party that retains his base, this libertarian base, while openly defying Big Chunkus and getting away with it.
He's also now rocking this beard.
Yeah.
And I asked him, like, once he was leaving that scrum of all the reporters, I was like, wait, is that why you're not afraid of a primary? Because of that beard? You like that one.
Well, now he and Trump are both Tesla owners because he famously drives a Tesla with a powered by coal bumper sticker. So maybe that's something that they can bring. They can talk about their new Teslas together.
He used to. He's been driving this big truck for the past
Oh, he doesn't
couple
drive
years.
the Tesla anymore.
He might still have the Tesla.
Yeah.
But he's got this big truck that's like, I don't know. I come from 4 generations of landscapers.
Yeah.
I get a little too excited when I see that truck.
Big ass truck.
Oh, it's a big ass truck. It's nice.
Oh, man. All right. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to bring up with you. Oh, let's talk about the Senate real quick.
I was going to say, my eyes are now on the Senate. And this is one of those where we're clueless. Like, if you listen to anyone saying they know how the Senate, because what? It'll basically come down to about 8 Democrats is what they need, because they have 53 Republicans. So they, just have to get over 60.
Yeah.
And it's not 100% clear how those moderate Republicans are going to go. But, like, coming out of the Senate lunches today, each week all the Republicans go in one room, all the Democrats go in the other room, and they have their lunch. Usually when they come out of those, they have their marching orders. And the party's like, in lockstep.
Here's what we're
other.
doing. Yeah.
Coming out of the one today, Democrats, I don't know if they suddenly all learned to like play poker really well and just like kept their cards close to their chest. I don't think they knew what they were going to do. And it kind of feels like Schumer's strategy was totally dependent on, hey, let's wait and see what the House does.
That's what I gathered. Yeah.
So now they were like the House.
Yeah.
And that's where Schumer might just be like, all right, free for all, vote your districts. Yeah, we'll see. As of now, it doesn't seem like there's this big unified Senate Democratic strategy. What we have heard from every Senate Democrat is basically, I don't want to be tied to a government shutdown. So
that's the big thing, and that's what we're going to talk about later in this episode with Jen Briney, is the fact that Democrats have very effectively leveraged Republican talking points, which often include we should shut the government down, to avoid ever really having responsibility for a government shutdown. Like, it doesn't matter if they control the House and the Senate and the White House. If the government shuts down, it's the Republicans' fault, no matter what. And will they stop that? I don't know. That felt more like a House thing than it did a I mean, although there is more of a ability to do it in the Senate if they filibuster it and it then triggers a 60 vote majority. If it doesn't, and it's a 51 vote majority, they can all just pretty much go home, right?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. It's funny. You know, I've been covering Congress 19 years, and I just think of it as like, 60 vote threshold for everything that's not, blah, 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 you know. And that's right. If Democrats don't even raise a fuss, then it can slide through with just
and they don't have, and nobody has to vote for it.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, this is why I love talking to you. I learned stuff.
Look at that. And we love talking to you. Matt Laslo, where can people find you?
I'm on the Twitter still, at Matt Laslo. Also on the Blue Skies, .Matt Laslo or whatever. How do you say the Blue Sky thing?
I have no idea.
I'm on the internet.
Find him. LASLO. You know where to find them. Go ahead and get it. Thank you so much, buddy.
Appreciate you.
Okay. So that was Matt Laslo. Big shout out to him. He came right off the floor to talk to you guys here. This was all a done and dusted episode. So everything that happens past now was recorded before the House made their vote. So if it seems a little odd, please be aware. But let's go ahead and start here. In many ways, I sit on the border between politics and technology. I have worked for and spoken about tech news for most of my podcasting career at this point through various different outlets. And obviously I've been doing this show for, I guess coming up on a decade now. Jeez Louise, time flies. But one of the things that has risen as I have become a professional in both of these areas is online donations. We talked with Katie Harbath about that last week. But one of the things that is known is that Democrats really got their act together with small dollar donations, specifically through an app called ActBlue. ActBlue mattered for a few different reasons. Number one, it was sitting on your phone and had all the gamified ways that apps use to get your attention, except as politics became more and more mainstream, it was able to entice people to just go ahead and click that button so they could give a little bit of money. $3, $5, $10, $100. In general, in the world of professional political donating, sub $200 per donation is what we understand as small dollar. ActBlue was blessed by the Democratic Party pretty early on. And the Republicans have been catching up with this ever since. And yet, there was this story from the New York Times this week. In February of 2025, 7 senior ActBlue staff members resigned in quick succession, including the highest-ranking legal officer, the vice president for customer service, and a technical expert with 14 years at the organization. The reasons for these departures remain undisclosed. Additionally, 2 unions representing ActBlue employees expressed concern over the alarming pattern of resignations, stating that it was eroding our confidence in the stability of the organization. The leadership issues follow a December 2024 letter from 142 stakeholders, including consultants, campaign staff, nonprofit personnel, technology vendors, donor organizers, donors, and academics, urging ActBlue to enhance protections for Democratic contributors against exploitation. Now, to give you a sense of the money we're talking about here, ActBlue helped contribute nearly $2 billion to the 2023-2024 campaign of Democratic candidates and causes, with $46.7 million channeled directly to Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign within hours. This is just within hours of her succeeding Biden as the nominee. It has helped raise $16 billion and counting since its inception in 2004. So, you've got ActBlue, which all of a sudden, a bunch of people are running out the door on. The entire leadership done. There's also part of this story, this New York Times story, where somebody who takes over the technical side then just warns anybody who would like to hear it that there are whistleblower protections in place. Well, that's very weird and not good, in my amateur opinion, if I'm going to be honest with you. And the reason why is because the money that is raised on ActBlue is, again, eye-popping. I'm just going to compare some numbers for you, and then I'm going to get to my point. President Biden and Vice President Harris raised over $1 billion on ActBlue in 2024. That's more than what Donald Trump raised, which was $900 million on the Republican version of the small dollar portal WinRed, which was only blessed by the Republican Party like 5 years ago. In fact, by the end of 2024, the Biden-Harris combined total was over $1.5 billion. I would like to remind you that in the popular vote, Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris and, to a certain extent, Joe Biden, which makes you think, why is there a small donor gap if there is not a enthusiasm gap? And historically, there's been a lot of really good answers to that. ActBlue is just a better app. It's better at gamifying the experience. They quite simply have more of a network effect and therefore are able to push in front of more qualified people the ability to donate. There is a richer demographic thing for Democrats that, in general, the kind of people that are going to give money have a little bit more money to give than the current Trump Republican populist base. But still, nobody moves personal action like Donald Trump. So you would think that if any Republican were going to have a chance to outraise, especially two candidates that had kind of problems with people getting excited about him, well, it would be Trump. But let's follow this down the road here, because it's not just Trump that was outraised by the Democrats in 2024 when it came to small dollar donations. That was also the case in all of the battleground Senate races. Sherrod Brown in Ohio raised $31.5 million on ActBlue. His opponent, Bernie Moreno, raised $20 million. And Sherrod Brown lost. John Tester in Montana raised $30.4 million. Meanwhile, Tim Sheehy raised $18 million. And John Tester lost. Colin Allred in Texas raised $41.3 million on ActBlue. That was 45% of his entire fundraising. Ted Cruz raised $25 million, and Ted Cruz beat him. So is it just that they built a better mousetrap? Or might there be some chicanery afoot? Well, there was one GOP strategist by the name of Mark Block who filed a racketeering lawsuit against ActBlue last year. And this is what he alleged: that his identity was stolen to make 385 fraudulent donations totaling $884 to left-wing causes, including 35 to Kamala Harris's Victory Fund. The donation, each under $200, exploited a loophole, allowing them to evade reporting to the Federal Election Commission. Block describes the scheme as smurfing, a form of money laundering used to bypass campaign contribution limits. He discovered frequent donation receipts in an old campaign email account, including repeated and recurring payments averaging just $3.24 each. And you can add this to the list of other, usually partisan, accusations that have been made against ActBlue. that there is identity theft. There have been reports of elderly people who are asked whether or not they have made 90 donations to a certain campaign, and they have no idea what you're talking about. There have been allegations that foreign nationals who would otherwise have to jump through a lot of hoops to donate to an American campaign were using surrogates to funnel money through ActBlue to the candidates and campaigns that they would like to support. All of this is illegal, and at the very least would face FEC retribution. And all of this now becomes a lot more interesting now that we know that people at ActBlue are running away from the building as if it were on fire. Here's the bottom line. This very well could be financial fraud on the level of tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. This may well explain why there has always been a persistent small donor gap between Democrats and Republicans. And if these kinds of antics are no longer going on, we have to wonder whether or not that will change the totals going forward. Not only for ActBlue, but you gotta wonder whether or not WinRed has also been playing fast and loose with some of these rules. But for our interest, the biggest possible issue is that ActBlue may or may not be a part of the fundraising landscape for the midterms and the presidential. For as long as it takes for the Democrats to find a suitable replacement, that would be lost lists, lost network effect, and a lack of trust in online donations that could materially affect races that are currently being planned or are ongoing. We will obviously keep an eye on this as things move forward. All right, the update, then Jen Briney. This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Head on over to our Substack. Get the 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Look, we did free HBO week last week. Hopefully you got a sense of that cadence, what it's like to have 4 episodes of PX3 in your life. Never miss a news story that is breaking. And guys, we got enough news these days that I could do 2 shows a day, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, and we probably have enough to just do 3 stories. So it helps to have it in your life. Head on over there. Easy peasy. $3 a week. Billed as 12 monthly. Right there. Or just, look, go all in. $99 for the year. Under $100, over 150 episodes of the show, less than $1 an episode. Guys, this is bargain basement journalism here. And we're barely doing journalism. It's mostly, I did some data journalism for that ActBlue segment. So, for you. Let's get to some stories we didn't have a chance to cover. Recent developments, and this is one of those stories that would have been different if I would have recorded it earlier in the day. But now we are facing a de-escalation in what was initially a very hot development between Canada and the United States. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, whose brother was very famous for being on crack. But Doug announced a suspension of the 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the United States following discussion with the U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. The decision came after President Trump initially threatened to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum imports of 50%, but later reverted them to 25% after Ontario's move. The suspension of Ontario's surcharge affects electricity exports to Michigan, New York, and Minnesota. Ford and Lutnick have agreed to meet in Washington to discuss the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or the USMCA, ahead of an April 2nd reciprocal tariff deadline. These measures aim to erase trade tensions and open the door to further discussions to avoid escalating trade conflicts. However, please tune in to your local breaking news hub because this one continues to get, wild and woolly. By the way, Canada did switch out the leader of the Liberal Party, a Liberal Party that now by polls is leading the Conservative Party in the election that will likely be held at some point over the next few weeks. Very, very interesting times. Very interesting times north of the border. Ukraine has agreed to a U.S. proposed 30-day ceasefire in its conflict with Russia following discussions in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. This truce, which can be extended by mutual consent, is contingent upon Russia's reciprocal implementation. In response, the U.S. will resume intelligence sharing and military aid to Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed readiness to accept the ceasefire, emphasizing the need for U.S. efforts to secure Russia's agreement. President Donald Trump plans to discuss this proposal with Russian President Vladimir Putin to facilitate its implementation. European leaders, including British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, has welcomed the ceasefire proposal, urging Russia to emerge constructively in the peace process. We're going to file this one under big if true, but all of the word that you have heard out of the State Department with Marco Rubio in Jeddah is balls in your court, Vlad. Ball is in the court of Moscow. Are they really here to deal? If they are really here to deal, then we will see. There have been some flashes of violence. Ukraine launched the largest drone attack of the war on Russia this morning as all of this was coming together. Of course, Russia has bombed over the last few days, heavier than they had before. So we will see where this lands, but it is notable that Ukraine has made the first move here. We have seen a dramatically different tone from Ukraine compared to what happened in the Oval Office, but a week and a half ago, which feels like 3 months. And finally, on Friday, Mahmoud Khalil was arrested by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents at his university-owned apartment in Manhattan. He is a graduate student at Columbia. The Department of Homeland Security alleges that his activism, which has been ongoing over the last year and a half after the October 7th attacks, is aligned with Hamas, a designated terrorist organization, citing President Trump's executive orders prohibiting anti-Semitism. Despite being a legal permanent resident, so he is not on a student visa, he has a green card. Khalil's green card was reportedly revoked during the arrest. Khalil is a Syrian national. His detention has sparked widespread criticism from civil rights organizations, legal experts, and political figures who argue that the arrest infringes upon First Amendment rights and sets a concerning precedent for free speech and academic freedom. A federal judge has temporarily blocked Khalil's deportation pending further legal proceedings. As of Monday, Khalil is being detained at the LaSalle Detention Center in Louisiana, awaiting a habeas corpus hearing scheduled for today, as this comes out, Wednesday, March 12th. This is an interesting one because a student visa would be a lot easier to revoke. Green card's a little harder. And it's a pretty clear-cut First Amendment issue. And there now becomes a line of what is voicing your support for the Palestinian people, unambiguously protected, and what is supporting Hamas, a designated terrorist group in the United States. Is there a legal line of free speech between the two? A lot of stuff that is going to get adjudicated here. It is a very, very, very interesting case. I'm going to put this out here. Ann Coulter came out and said, look, I'm for pretty much deporting any and everyone, but I don't know if there's a legal standing to do this. So if you've lost Ann Coulter, then you know that we are on the fringes of deportation. We are on the fringes here. But obviously a lot of very, very passionate voices on this subject. That's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you have to go to support this show. Head on over there. Get your bonus episodes. You deserve it. And now, Jen Briney. Joining us to talk shutdowns and more, whatever we want to go over. It is the one, the only Congressional Dish's own Jen Briney. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Oh, just another day making the political sausage. So we're in a weird moment with this continuing resolution. There is a fight on the Republican side to wrangle everybody together because they have this very thin majority that is essentially one vote after you assume that Thomas Massie is going to vote against it. And the Democrats do not seem swayable. But what is different this time is that you have heard, because of the opposition to Trump and a desire from some liberals and Democratic voting base to hashtag do something, that the Democrats should do something, and they should do something that they have not done in a while, and that's make a big deal about the fact that they are not going to fund the government and they don't care if it gets shut down. Indeed, it would be better that they have shut it down. What is your general take on all that?
The people who are encouraging the Democrats to do the thing that they have rightfully said for many years is stupid and reckless and irresponsible and bad policy, bad politics. I mean, the Democrats have been right about this every single time we've had these shutdown showdowns. So they then turn around and throw away all of their principles. No, bad advice. Don't do it. It would be nice if the Democrats stood for something, and I think this is part of the political problem with them, is that those of us who don't love what the Republicans are doing, we look at the Democrats and it's like, what exactly do you stand for? Because if you stand for government shutdowns now, like not only did you become the party of Liz Cheney, now you stand for shutdowns, like what do you stand for? So right now, though, it doesn't look like that's actually the plan. We'll find out, but
also it's like it really would be almost more than anything ceding a level of moral superiority on the issue.
Yes.
Because the Democrats have been very good at, whether or not they are in the majority or not, having the Republicans own shutdowns, because there are more people on the Republican side that say things like shutdowns are good, actually. So
yes.
they've been able to do that. There's not going to be anybody on the Democratic side that is going to vote for this clean-esque CR as it is being thrown around. But the question would be, does anybody say, yes, awesome, we're really excited that the government shut down? That's really what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah, and I have heard Democratic surrogates like Professor Scott Galloway. He has been actively encouraging the Democrats to shut down the government in order to look like they're doing something. But I think what the something is matters. And so, I don't see any appetite for this in Congress. Also because if you think about what a continuing resolution is, it's extending the funding from the last year. So what we're saying right now is that the 2024 funding would go into 2025. Well, in 2024, that funding had to be negotiated with Democrats.
Yes.
And
they controlled it, right?
They didn't really control it, but they definitely had to negotiate with, or Johnson had to negotiate with them.
Yes. Yeah.
So some of their priorities got into that funding. That would not be the case with anything that would be crafted right now. And on top of that, all of these cuts you're hearing about from like Doge, which aren't real, all of the stuff they're saying they're cutting would get funded if you just have a continuing resolution. So even politically, the Democrats shutting down the government in order to shut down this particular continuing resolution doesn't really make sense, because this CR might be the best they're going to get. So it's just a dumb strategy in every way.
But yet, you're not going to see anybody vote for it on the Democratic side. And part of
you
the
might
reason,
in the Senate.
The Senate, yeah, but the Senate is a little bit of a different story, though, right? Because the Republicans have, weirdly, a larger pad of votes in the Senate than they do in the House, which is kind of insane to think about. But, you know, a 3-vote majority in the Senate for one side gives them a lot of wiggle room, especially on something like keeping the government open.
Well, it does only as long as there's no filibuster, which is in the Democrats' hands. Because if a Democrat decides to filibuster this, then it becomes a 60-person threshold as opposed to a 51-person threshold. And that would require Democrats to cross the aisle. So right now, the plan is to jam the Senate. So essentially, the House plans to vote on this on Tuesday afternoon and then leave, which... If we want to talk about Democratic stupidity, here's some more stupidity for you. We have known that this deadline was March 14th since December. And yet the Democrats decided to schedule their retreat for this Wednesday through Friday, March 14th. So it's like they really want to get out of town. We know there's at least 5 Democrats in the House that are probably not going to be there anyway. And if this does get pushed any further, the Democrats, well, they're on vacay. So... You know,
by the way, their retreat is in Leesburg, Virginia. It's not exactly in Aruba, right? Like we're talking like they're probably not even staying on property. They could probably just go sleep at home at the end of the night.
Yeah, but just the stupidity of looking at the calendar and being like, oh, well, the Republicans won't bring us to the brink of a shutdown, will they? Like, of course they will. They do it every single time.
Well, also they have a 1-vote majority. Like, they have a 1-vote majority, and like at least 6 or 7 of them are like crazy budget hogs. The only difference is that Thomas Massie is the only one who pins the national debt to his chest every day. Like, that's otherwise there's so much of a reason why this was going to be challenging. I will say, though, in terms of vote wrangling, you know, and you watch this stuff really closely, it feels like of the 3 big tests that the Republican majorities, the very thin Republican majority has had to face, confirming Mike Johnson as speaker and voting for the budget, this seems like slightly less of a challenge because the president wants it. The Senate seems like they're going to pass it. So, you know, I don't know. Maybe that's the reason why Trump got mad at Massie last night.
Oh, that's 100% the reason he got mad at Massie last night, because Massie's just a hard no on this. And unlike, you know, Victoria Spartz or Beth Van Dyne, who are like, we are hard no's, but like, we're not. We're going to vote for it. Yeah. Massie actually has voted against all the things he said he was going to vote against. And so the plan right now, I do think the Republicans are going to have the votes to pass this on Tuesday afternoon. And then the plan is to just adjourn for the rest of the week. And the Democrats are on board with this plan, obviously, because they planned their retreat for these crucial 3 days, which really does leave this up to the Senate, which means the Senate Democrats either have to allow it to pass, or if they filibuster, they're shutting down the government and or having to vote with the Republicans. So it really does put all the pressure on Senate Democrats. It's a smart political strategy, even if it gives you the icks.
Let's take this out broader for a second. I think you've accurately pointed out that there is both a desire from the Democratic base for the Democrats to feel like they are doing something. And yet this is probably not the thing, at least in your estimation, for them to do. Just describe viewing all the spaghetti that's being thrown at the wall from the Democratic side right now, because there does seem to be a lot of pretty big targets that the Trump administration is kind of painting on themselves here, and yet Democrats seem to be going every which way. They can't stay focused on one thing, and everybody's got a different way to get to it.
I mean, there's a total lack of discipline, and you can see the change in leadership from Nancy Pelosi in the House to Hakeem Jeffries, because Nancy didn't put up with this crap. And so Hakeem has no control over these Democrats. And my conspiracy theory when it comes to what the Democrats are doing right now is that I don't think they actually want power. I don't think they actually want responsibility. I think they kind of like being on the sidelines and being able to say, oh, there's nothing we can do about it unless you vote for us in 2026. Like we're just on the sidelines, because right now my bugaboo and the thing that's like literally keeping me awake at night is that there is a path to Democrats getting power in the House by this summer.
You mentioned this on We're Not Wrong. Please lay it out.
Yeah, they're not doing anything. So right now the math is Republicans have 218 votes in the House and the Democrats have 214 because one of their elderly members of the House just died last Tuesday. So they lost someone, but that is a seat that they can probably get back considering it was Democratic. So there's one. On April 1st, there is going to be a special election in Florida to replace two Republicans in the House. One was Matt Gaetz, who had to resign, and another became a part of Trump's cabinet. And yes, they are reliably Republican districts, but this is a time when there are people who voted for Trump who are frustrated. There are definitely veterans who are angry at the Trump administration, and Matt Gaetz's district has a lot of veterans in it. So there's reason to believe that you could get turnout in a special election that could change the historical voting of these two districts, especially if the Democrats were going all out, throwing all their money at it, calling all the people who are desperate to resist and saying, fly down to Florida in the winter and knock on some doors. There could be an effort here.
Maybe going down there, having sympathetic Democratic politicians go down there and campaign.
Exactly.
Maybe that would be an idea.
Or do anything at all, really. I mean, even social media posts would be more than they're doing right now to win those two elections. So that's an opportunity that is going to be taking place in 2 weeks. They've decided not to do anything about it. And then Elise Stefanik is a member of the House of Representatives right now, but she is the person
eventually she's going to be in the UN.
Exactly. And so that is another seat that would open up. And so if the Democrats won all four of those seats, that could flip the House 218-217 in their favor. And they have done nothing to make that a reality. Nothing. So that's what I'm angry about. They're saying like, well, we have no power. We just need power. It's like, well, there's a path for you to have power. You've chosen not to take it.
You know, from my perspective, I think it would be a miracle if Democrats would win one of those seats just based on the demographic of those areas and the voting patterns that they've had before. But I'm totally on your side because to me, it's like, look, and I'll say this about the Florida Democrats, which are one of the most incompetently run parties in America right now. You need the practice. You need the practice of hustling to first base. Like, yes, you're going to get thrown out. Yes, you're probably going to lose by double digits. Try to do something. Look,
this is what we mean by do something. Try.
You're going to throw out a bunch of ActBlue links, although there's, a whole nother situation with that currently. But like, you're going to raise a bunch of money because you can say, hey, we could flip the House. We can flip the House. This is a huge moment. Do you believe that the Trump administration needs to be derailed? We can derail it if we win these three things. And at the very least, you could do well enough. You could throw a few shock polls out and make the Republicans spend more money. There is a comparative benefit to it, even if you're not going to get it. But you are dead right that they have little to no interest in it. They see it more like I see it, where it's like, oh, you're probably not going to win. And they're like, okay, cool. Well, we just won't try.
Yeah, just surrender. So like when they're sitting there at the not a State of a Union, sitting there with ping pong paddles that say resist on it. And I'm going, there's an election in 2 weeks, you feckless morons. Like that's the frustration that I think a lot of us are feeling with the Democrats right now.
You're also seeing like a few different tacks that are being kind of taken right now. Ro Khanna, representative, has very much tried to stake out the lane that Democrats need to be a party that understands that waste, fraud, and abuse is a problem, and especially in blue-leaning areas, that they shouldn't immediately blanch at the concept of Doge. You can be upset about things that are happening. You can be upset about decisions that are taken, but that waste, fraud, and abuse has become a rot in the Democratic Party. You've got Gavin Newsom in one of the best, just sociopathic lizard person U-turns of all time, just being like, yep, men need to be out of women's sports with Charlie Kirk on his podcast, which think whatever you will about that issue. And I can understand why he would do it because it is like a 70-30 issue right now, but also to just disregard any and everything that you have said about that in the past, just with no even like, you want to know what? I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Doesn't even do that. It's just like, get them out. It's really unfair. And then you have other folks who are doubling down, who are saying like no, these are issues, these are social issues, these are LGBT issues that we need to own. We can't run away from them right now. Are there any interesting strands that you've seen that stick out to you?
Well, I mean, when you look at the waste, fraud, and abuse issue, the fact that the Democrats aren't owning it because they have identified so much of it. So it's like the person that keeps running through my mind, she's no longer in Congress, but Carolyn Maloney led a multi-year effort exposing the waste in private contracting in the Defense Department. And we also have these reports going back many years from inspectors general and from the Government Accountability Office. Like, we have documented, and when I say we, I mean Democratic and Republican administrations alike, we have documented from the experts there's all this opportunity to go after real waste, fraud, and abuse. And what the Democrats could be doing right now is saying, listen, what DOJ is doing is the exact opposite of what the GAO told us 3 weeks ago we should be doing to identify and get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. Here's the report, because it just came out. Here's the report. This is what we should be doing. Here's the opposite, which is what Elon is doing. Like, they could be taking this issue seriously because they have for years.
Yeah.
And then getting specific about it. And instead, I don't see them doing that either. It is kind of like, oh, Doge is bad. And so I know the response that I am getting on Twitter when I talk about, my issues with Doge, mainly that it's not an actual department and it has no real power constitutionally. The response I get is, but don't you think waste and fraud is bad? And it's like they could neuter that argument by holding up all these reports that have been done over the years.
They have let the Doge side kind of own it. They've let them kind of plant their flag in it, and I think that's part of the issue that I see on the Democratic side. And this is a point that I'm going to steal from a conservative podcast that I've listened to. But these are a bunch of people on the Ruthless podcast that have worked in congressional Republican politics for long enough to have been there when they were in a similar position to where the Democrats are now. And it was the beginning of Obama. The Republicans were in the dirt, and they were talking about the messages that they had to get across to all of their members were keep your powder dry. Eventually there's going to be something that comes down the pike that we're going to latch onto, and we're going to go at it full bore, but we're all going to go at it in the same direction. And we're not going to totally disqualify ourselves with the American people by screaming and yelling about a bunch of stuff that happens before that. And they were able to do it with Obamacare. Eventually Obamacare happens and they're able to make political hay out of that. And that's the Tea Party movement. But the problem with the Democrats, I think you pointed it out, it's not even necessarily that anything, the stuff that they say is per se wrong. It's just that it's fleeting. They're making mountains out of molehills, or at least things that they don't have the patience to stick with for more than a week. Go back and look at the protests that were happening 3 weeks ago, and then ask me whether or not anybody's talking about it on the Democratic side today. That is just a short memory that does not build goodwill with the voting public. Like you need to show them that you are good stewards here, because what your point, and I think it's a wise one, and they should heed it, is, hey, be competent government people, and contrast that to a chaotic or incompetent government management. That's pretty simple. That's a way that's a message you can take to the kitchen table people of America.
Yeah, be the adults in the room. And it's just, I'm also angry with some of the hypocrisy. So the Democratic behavior at the presidential address, like, they were the ones who were saying we need to have some decorum in Congress. I remember when Representative Joe Wilson, Republican of South Carolina, got up and yelled, "You lie," to President Obama.
Now. Oh, back in a bygone era of civility when it was just one guy screaming two words.
It was one guy, but it was shocking because we don't behave that way.
It was very shocking. Yes, it was very shocking.
Now,
kids, ask your parents.
We were grossed out when Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert then were screaming at President Biden. And then for the Democrats to have their member of Congress be the first one to be kicked out of an address. You had them refusing to walk the president in, which, like, I get that you don't like the president, but still respect the office. So it's like they're just not behaving like the adults in the room that we need adults in that room. And so it just feels like to me that we have nothing but children. And I think that's why a lot of us are just very concerned about literally everything that's happening in Congress.
Who was it that got kicked out again? His
Al
name is
Green.
Al Green. I'm going to say this. I don't know if I said this on the show yet. Al Green is not as smart as Marjorie Taylor Greene. And especially when it comes to yelling during the State of the Union or similar like speeches. Because the last time that Marjorie Taylor Greene yelled during the State of the Union, I think she might have done, she's done it at least half of the available times that she could scream during these speeches. I know 2 for sure. It might be all of them for all I know. But the last time she did it, she waited until Joe Biden was talking about something that was germane to immigration. She screamed the name Laken Riley. She got Joe Biden to bite, who talked about Laken Riley, and it elevated an issue that was clearly a winner for the Republicans, considering where the immigration issue went during the presidential campaign, and the fact that there was a bipartisan act called the Laken Riley Act, right? So it's like that was a seed that was planted in a high-profile moment, and yes, it was a violation of decorum, and you can bemoan that element of it. I think rightly so. But what Al Green did was just stand up and start yelling at the beginning.
He was yelling, you don't have a mandate. So he was arguing with Trump whether or not he has a mandate. It wasn't even about policy.
No.
Yeah.
And so it's
if you're going to get dragged out of Congress, make them drag you out of Congress.
I said this on the show. I'm like, look, no matter what, if you want made for television, and look, that was a made for television speech when you're making people cry by giving the cancer kid a honorary Secret Service badge and stuff like that. It's made for TV. That was very, very well orchestrated for them to do stuff like that. But if you want to play that game, the best thing you can do as a 77-year-old man is get your ass dragged out. Have 2 people with either side as your, loafers are dragging up the aisleway there, because that's
the script
going to be
writes itself. You have the president who's being accused of being a white supremacist ordering the guards to drag out the elderly black man. Like, doesn't look good.
Doesn't look good.
No,
but he didn't do that.
No, he just walked out.
They said, and he was. Can you get somebody who's not shaking a cane?
They can't control Al Green. He already introduced articles of impeachment with the Democrats, and they were just kind of like, can we not just yet? Like, if we're going to use that, let's use it wisely. So Al Green's kind of his own thing. You noticed that when he was being escorted out of Congress, no one was trying to stop anyone from getting him out of Congress.
But they
so he's
did
not exactly
sing
popular.
"We Shall Overcome" when he was censured.
With the censured, which is performative and stupid. And
what are we even doing, man?
And there were 7 Democrats 7 or 10, I can't remember exactly. But there was a group of Democrats that voted also to censure Al Green.
Voted to censure somebody in their own party. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just like a real rudderless element to where the Dems are right now. And I think that you're dead right, that they didn't really have a plan to push this. And probably it's better for them to not have a plan with this, that if you're not going to go all in, decide we're the party of shutdowns now and really make a big deal about it, then it's probably better that they just fold their cards. That actually might be the wiser game theory move to play right now. But
like I said, if you let the Republicans craft government funding for 2025, you're definitely not going to get a bill that takes Democrats into account. So I don't think you'd get anything better than a continuing resolution. And just to be clear, continuing resolutions are bad. It means that no new programs can be started. The military absolutely hates these. And it keeps government funding at levels below, inflation increases. So every agency is essentially running with less, which is why the House Freedom Caucus is voting for this, because they see it as a de facto cut, which in a way it is. So it is the best the Democrats can get. It is a de facto cut. They're not going to like passing it.
The Republicans can get,
Yeah, but to be the people that are if your argument is that it is bad to do draconian cuts to government, shutting the whole thing down also doesn't work with your message. Just saying. Either government is good and you want it open, or government is bad and you don't. So telling the people who don't like government, like, oh, we're going to shut it down, that'll show you. It's like, no, that's exactly what they want. And they want to blame it on you. So don't let them.
I think I told you this, but were you aware, and this was a theory by Wunderkind Gabe Fleischer of the Wake Up to Politics newsletter, that a shutdown, the concept of shutdowns could just be waved away at the stroke of a pen by the Attorney General?
By the Attorney General?
Yeah, it was
No,
a
I
memo
didn't
by
know
the
this.
it was a memo by the Carter's Attorney General that shutdowns would shut down non-essential governmental things. Previous to that, it would just immediately kick into a CR and they would just go from there. But there was a frustration back in the 70s that nothing would ever get done if a continuing resolution just kind of auto happened. And so it was Carter's White House that decided, no, we're going to introduce this mechanism that will get people together and actually decide things. I don't think that that's actually worked out.
No. And because there's been
But
talk for a long time.
Pam Bondi could just say, like, oh, no, this doesn't happen anymore. That's not how I interpret this whatever statute that the Carter Attorney General was talking about.
I mean, that's interesting because I've heard about the idea of having Congress say that in the event of a government funding lapse, that there's an automatic continuing resolution. I don't know that I believe that that is already legal and it's just up to the Attorney General. I'm not sure I buy that.
Well, it obviously has not been tested.
No.
Although if there was ever going to be a White House that wanted to test it, it would probably be this one.
Maybe, but I think they would love the optics of the Democrats shutting down the government, because then when the Republicans want to try it the next time, they've just taken that argument away from the Democrats that the Democrats have been consistent, at least until now, saying government shutdowns are always bad. We never want this to happen.
Yeah.
So for them to be the ones to do that, they would lose all morality in that statement. Like it would be gone for them forever. So I think the Republicans would love it.
That was Gabe's point though. It's like, yes, they would love it. You want to know what they would love more? Having big, strong Trump say, no, I'm going to reopen the government unilaterally. And the Democrats not only are feckless in terms of bankrupt in their morals, but also they're totally impotent.
Yeah, because that means that they could have just done that when they had Biden in the office and when they had Obama in office. Yeah, that's true.
But I don't think it's going to happen. I think that we're gonna get this CR passed, and then it'll be on to every other gigantic brush fire that is currently engulfing the American political world, including this never-ending, it seems like, fight with Canada, of all people. Canada.
It just
Mexico,
got worse, too.
Mexico I kind of get. China I definitely get. China, I totally understand the China side. I understand the Mexico part. The Canada thing, boy, does that really just baffle the old germs, man. I don't quite know where we're going with this. Like at any moment, I'm just kind of assuming that it's like, all right, are we like at emergency summit? Like, where else are we going from here? It's like, it's going to be a 1,000,000% on air that comes across from the United States. It's like, okay, like once we do all of that, and it's like, yes, we're all really willing to kill our economies. Like at some point, somebody has to sit down and figure out what's actually going on.
Well, the why of it. Like, I get the Mexico one because they're saying the fentanyl that's coming over the border, and there's some truth to that. It's overblown, of course, but like, fentanyl in the Canadian border is not an issue. Like, is the goal of this really that Trump wants to take over Canada and have it be the 51st state? Because he keeps saying it. So I just don't know what Canada can do to make it go away. Like, is this really, are we really going down this road just because Trump is nuts? Like, I don't know what's happening.
My gut, although he has said the 51st state thing a lot more than he has said either the Panama Canal thing, which kind of got quietly resolved.
Yeah, that's what my
week.
last episode is about on Congressional Dish.
Like that kind of, if you are on the side of Trump and you're like, hey, the insane bluster actually has a point. Like, you could point to the Panama Canal, which at times Trump has hinted at like war with Panama.
Yeah.
And then quietly this week, BlackRock, which now apparently is a MAGA organization, just decided to buy out the Chinese companies on either side of the canal, which was the big issue.
Well, there's a couple. It's not completely resolved because the Chinese are also building a bridge over the canal. So that's one thing that they're worried about. And then there's some fees issues. But like the two ports on either end of the canal, that was big. So I do feel like
Huge,
the temperature on that came down, like way down. Greenland is still a high temperature thing though. And this Canada thing is starting to be off the charts because there's that guy in Ontario that's fighting back against Trump and saying he's going to cut off electricity. He's going to cut off electricity to three of our states.
The other one.
Yeah. And so Trump is now saying like your economy is going to pay. Like it's right before we went on the air. It got ramped up even more. So this is insane. It's insane.
Yeah.
There's so much about this timeline that's just like insane.
And that's the thing is that at a certain point, Canada's going to have to blink because we can survive this longer than they can. But what is the blinking?
What's the blink?
Yeah.
What can they do? What's Trump even asking for?
Because if you listen to like the Canadian ambassador was on Face the Nation this week. And she was like, we're talking with them. We're open. We're open for business. Like, what do you want? What's going on here?
But if he really wants the American flag flying over Canada, Canada can't blink on that. So that's why this one concerns me.
But also, that doesn't make any sense even from his perspective, aside from being an expansionist conqueror. And yes, we have to now take seriously that might be the thing that is motivating all this. I don't assume it is. I assume that this is more of like, you know, the Gaza Riviera Hotel and Casino, where he is introducing a reality that is far worse than what some of the people who are in power would want. And so they are now incentivized to make a deal closer to where he wants the parameters to be. But if you were going to do that, there's no way to do it and preserve Republican control. It would cement Democratic control of America for a generation. Like it would be the like greatest thing that Democrats could ever hope for is like, yes, let's go one for one. Provinces are now states. We control the Senate forever. We control the House forever. It is now just adding a bunch of left of center people that are going to totally reshape a very narrow majority right now for Republicans. So that would be ridiculous on so many different levels. Unless you just gerrymandered the living hell out of Canada and like Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver were all one congressional district.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't the Republicans do that? They've already gerrymandered the rest of the country with the exception of like 3 states. So that might very well be the plan.
Come on. Be nice. Democrats are doing it too. The Democrats
That's what I said, with the exception of 3 states. The Democrats do it, but they're bad at it, which is kind of the Democrats' motto. We do the thing. We're just bad at the thing.
That, you want to know what? When people are like hashtag do something, they should answer, we're just terrible. Like, we are desperately trying to do everything you want all at once. We're just really, really bad at it. It's like, don't worry. We're also embarrassing. We're ineffectual and we're embarrassing.
Yeah, that's true.
Jen, you mentioned that there's a lot more on Panama on the Congressional Dish most recent episode. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so there was a hearing that happened in the Senate. And so I just got a lot of answers about what the Republicans were concerned about and what they're thinking about doing. And just the history of the Panama Canal and us. There is interpretations of a treaty in which Donald Trump kind of could invade if he wanted to, which is why I think that threat was taken so seriously. So like I said, that issue is not over. But if you listen to my episode, by the end of it, you will understand the issues that are left and you can decide for yourself how panicked you are about it. I know I'm feeling much better after
So,
getting
so
that
you would say
information.
that sale, that BlackRock sale of the 2 ports, like that does take some air out of the balloon.
It takes some air out of the balloon. I think that if we were in normal times, I would be like, yeah, I'm still keeping an eye on
Done
this,
and
but there's
dusted,
so many other things that I'm kind of putting Panama on the back burner. So this is an episode that I think it'll just help you understand going forward if you hear anything else but the Panama Canal, because there are a few more issues. I think after listening to that congressional dish, you'll be able to grasp what's going on.
All right. Everybody go give it a spin. Jen Briney, Congressional Dish, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, Politics, Politics is written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, and edited by Will Saddleberg, doing the Lord's work. We're all bringing it to you for Dog and Pony Show Audio based in Austin, Texas. You can email the show, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. You can support us with a one-time donation, paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20, and you can hit us up on our Cash App, PX3Cash. Send anything you'd like in the mail, Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas, 78715. Of course, you can always get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Either $3 a week, build 12 monthly, or go ahead, $99. Just get the whole year knocked out. By the time that you got to think about any of that again, we're going to be hip deep in midterms, baby. It's going to be great. 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100. Less than $1 an episode. Whew. Whew. Inflation resistant, might I add. But it is our founding tier that gets your name read at the end of each and every free episode, including L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, A Dog Named Checkers, Gloria, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Stephen, and Zombie Doc. You want to join their illustrious ranks? One place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Sign up at the founding tier. On the next edition of the program, on Friday, we are hopefully going to be joined by Edinger Mintum. He's always a favorite here on the show. He did a S to F tier list for presidential campaigns. So S tier is the best, F tier is the worst. I did my own, and we're going to get way in the weeds, way nerdy. It's going to be a great time. All right. Till next time, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that dares discuss. Oh, 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show Audio.